Ryan, a war veteran carrying invisible wounds, thought he was only seeking peace in the West Virginia mountains with his German shepherd, Duke. But after settling into life, Duke began acting strangely, barking every night at the deep forest as if hearing an unseen call. Not out of fear, but as if trying to convey an urgent message. Trusting his companion, Ryan grabbed a flashlight and followed Duke through a fierce storm and thick fog until they found a rusted iron gate buried under rubble, still bearing the faded inscription, Trans-Allegheny Asylum. Beneath the cold earth lay something hidden for decades, and it was waiting to be awakened. What secrets lie dormant beneath that abandoned hospital? Support us by subscribing to the channel to explore the story together. After 12 years in the military and 3 tours in Afghanistan, Ryan Mercer carried memories that refused to rest. He left the city with a suitcase, a few old papers, and his German shepherd, Duke, the only friend left from the battlefield. The sound of car horns reminded him of bullets. Streetlights flickered like nighttime artillery. He chose to live in seclusion in the Trans-Allegheny Mountains of West Virginia, where fog blanketed the paths and wind howled through the pines. A small wooden cabin on the edge of the forest was where he started over, with only the sound of the wind, the smell of coffee, and Duke's footsteps on the porch. But across the hills, locals spoke of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, a mental hospital abandoned since the 1970s. When the night wind blew through the valley, they heard screams echoing from the earth. Ryan didn't believe it until one stormy night. Thunder shook the sky, and Duke suddenly howled and bolted outside. Ryan grabbed his coat and flashlight, chasing after him through the flooded path. In a blinding flash of lightning, he saw Duke standing before a collapsed mound, staring down at broken bricks. Ryan shone his light and saw a rusted iron gate with faded words, Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, staff entrance. The wind whistled through the cracks, sounding like the sigh of the past. Ryan knelt, scraping away mud and debris from the hatch. Broken bricks gave way, revealing a rusted steel frame. The iron gate was heavy but sturdy, its hinges screeching as he pried it open with a crowbar. A cold gust hit him, carrying the damp, metallic stench of old blood. Duke shrank back, hackles raised, but stayed close. "Let's go, buddy," Ryan said softly. His voice low in the rain. A concrete staircase appeared under the flashlight. Narrow, moss-covered, water dripping steadily from the ceiling onto each step. Every footfall echoed, the sound bouncing in the confined space, making it feel like someone followed behind. The musty smell grew stronger as he and Duke descended. The flashlight swept a long hallway, its wet brick walls stained, paint peeling like dead skin. A thin layer of water on the floor reflected the flickering light. The air was heavy, so still Ryan could hear his own heartbeat. Duke moved ahead, head low, sniffing the shadows. To the left, a heavy metal door stood ajar, a warped sign hanging crooked. Ward C, Behavioral Observation. He pushed it lightly. The hinges groaned sharply. The small room's flashlight beam lit a rusted exam table, a torn leather restraint chair, and walls covered in marks. Long scratches, scrawled words carved with something sharp. "We are not insane. Stop the noise." Another wall bore burn marks, stained as if scorched. Ryan took a deep breath, suppressing the chill creeping up his spine. He'd seen too much death in war, but this place felt different, not fear but the erasure of humanity. In the corner, a tilted filing cabinet spilled open, its drawers holding waterlogged, moldy papers. Ryan picked up a readable stack. The first line was bold, U.S. Department of Defense. Restricted access. He turned the page, Project Mindvale. Subject Behavioral Conditioning Report. Under Diagnosis, names listed one after another, each marked veteran, each conclusion reading terminated. His pencil trembled. Duke whimpered, eyes fixed on the room's far end, where another iron door stood slightly open. Ryan approached, hand on the cold handle. It opened to a larger room, iron beds lined up, blankets in tatters. On the wall, faint red paint read, "We were soldiers once." He swept the flashlight slowly, spotting a surgical table in the far corner, leather straps for wrists and ankles still intact. Electrical cords ran to the ceiling, vanishing into darkness. An old operating lamp dangled, its power cord severed. Everything stood still, as if someone had left hours ago. Ryan knelt, picking up a nameplate by the table's foot. Dr. Henry Lowell, Chief Medical Officer. The name quickened his pulse. He'd heard it in briefings at base. A military doctor investigated, then vanished without a trace. The flashlight hit the opposite wall, illuminating overlapping notes, shaky handwriting. Neural control successful at 32 Hz. Subject exhibits obedience. Sweat beaded on Ryan's forehead, despite the icy air. Duke stayed close, whining. From deep in the hallway, wind hissed, carrying the sound of metal clanging, like something collapsing. Ryan switched off the flashlight briefly, listening only dripping water, his heartbeat, and Duke's breathing. He flicked it back on, stepping out, scanning the dark westward hallway. Each step echoed, 2, then 3, as if someone moved in sync. He stopped, swung the light behind him, seeing only dust motes. Turning back, the beam caught a rusted sign, Experiment Wing, Restricted Access. Ryan took a deep breath, eyes fixed on the Department of Defense seal on the wet paper in his hand. Below Project Mindvale, a handwritten subtitle read, Trans-Allegheny Facility, Phase 2. The remaining files were jumbled in an old iron cabinet, the top drawer jammed with rust. Ryan braced his knee, yanked hard, and the hinge screeched, falling to the floor. Thick dust rose, mixing with the heavy, musty air. He flipped through yellowed pages, handwritten notes, scrawled on old military forms, many smudged by water and mud. The cover's first line was bold, United States Department of Defense, Behavioral Conditioning Program. Below, in red ink, a scribbled name, Project Mindvale. He scanned columns of notes. Subject, Sergeant Robert H., 26 years old, PTSD. Transferred to Trans-Allegheny Facility. Treatment, electro-resonance stimulation. Result, involuntary aggression, terminated. The words were cold, emotionless, treating humans like test subjects. Ryan swallowed hard. Another file detailed brainwave results, charts, and electrode placement diagrams. A handwritten note, likely from the experiment's lead, read, Subject begins to obey complex verbal commands under low-frequency exposure. Aggressive response decreased. Cognitive function unstable. In the page's corner, an eagle-embossed seal and a scrawled signature, Dr. Henry Lowell. The name sent a shiver through him. He'd heard it in Kandahar, whispers among officers about a doctor prosecuted for battlefield behavioral control techniques. They said Lowell died in a lab fire, but no body was found. Ryan pulled out his phone, snapping photos of each page, each signature. As he closed the third file, a black and white photo slipped from its binding. He picked it up. The image was faded, the paper discolored, but the faces were clear. 8 soldiers in fatigues, standing in a row, a wooden sign behind them. Test Group Alpha, Camp Lowell. His heart slowed. In the second row, 4th from the left, was Ethan Cole, his familiar smile but lifeless eyes. Ethan, his squad mate, dead by suicide, 10 years after discharge. Military records said Ethan was treated at a West Virginia neurological recovery center. Ryan hadn't thought much of it then, assuming his friend was battling post-war depression. The photo trembled in his hand. In the bottom right corner, faded blue ink read, H. Lowell, Chief Medical Officer. He turned to Duke, the dog sniffing the room. Ethan, he muttered, voice hoarse, choked. Memories flooded back. Ethan, in a tent, hands shaking around a coffee mug, whispering, ever hear the wind talk? Ryan had laughed then. Now the question returned, heavy as a stone in his chest. Duke whimpered, then growled, nose aimed at the wall behind the cabinet. Ryan shone the flashlight. A 2-meter square of wall was a different shade of gray, smooth, moss-free, as if recently patched. He tapped it lightly. The sound alternated between solid and hollow, uneven. There was a void behind it. Ryan looked for tools, spotting the crowbar near the table. He wedged its steel tip into the wall's edge, prying. Mortar flaked off, falling in clumps. Beneath was a thin steel plate, roughly welded into the brick frame. Someone had sealed something behind it, but sloppily, welds uneven, some rusted through. He pressed his ear to it, hearing a hollow echo, like an empty space beyond. Duke stood beside him, tail tucked, hackles up, whining long and low. Ryan stepped back, took a deep breath, and shone the flashlight on the steel. In the left corner, in faint red paint, someone had written words, now barely legible, but two stood out: "Do not." The rest was scraped away. He touched the dried paint, icy to the touch. Wind from the tunnel whistled through a crack, carrying the stale chill of a long-sealed space. He looked at Duke, the dog's eyes wary. "Something's back there," Ryan said softly. Almost to himself, he glanced at the photo. 8 soldiers, one of them Ethan. Another could have been him, if fate had turned slightly. The flashlight hit the gray wall, casting a dim glow. In his mind, the file's words repeated: "Subject exhibits obedience under low-frequency exposure." He gripped the crowbar tighter. The smell of rust, wet paper, and time's dampness blended into something indescribable. Outside, the tunnel's wind shifted, blowing through the hallway, sounding like the sigh of someone left behind. Duke growled softly, pawing the floor. Ryan switched off the flashlight briefly to listen, hearing only the steady drip of water from the ceiling, like a clock's tick. He turned it back on, staring at the odd-colored wall. He knew now that what lay hidden behind that cement wasn't just old architecture, but evidence of something buried for half a century. The cement wasn't as thick as he thought. Each crowbar strike sent fine dust flying, the smell of old lime and rust mixing sharply. Ryan worked slowly, prying and listening, wary of the wall's weak structure collapsing. After 10 minutes, he broke through a circular patch, just enough to see inside, pitch-black darkness. He shone the flashlight, the beam piercing a deep void, like a service shaft or sub-basement access. A steep iron staircase led downward, its steps thick with dust and cobwebs. Cold air rose, heavy, untouched by human lungs for years. Duke barked softly, stepping back, ears down. Ryan gripped the flashlight, voice low, "Stay close." He stepped onto the first rung, the iron creaking. Each step down thickened the air, damp and heavy. At the bottom, he stood in a larger room than the hallway above, high-ceilinged, likely a sealed lab. The flashlight swept across, glinting off control panels and tangled cables along the walls. A row of metal chairs, bolted to the floor, held brittle leather straps like old rope. In the center, a surgical table was rigged with wires and gas tubes. Beside it, a line of military-labeled machines, faded. Some devices still had faintly blinking indicator lights, powered by an auxiliary source. Ryan approached, wiping dust from a control panel, revealing EEG frequency regulator, U.S. Army Medical Division. He opened a drawer, finding glass jars of brain tissue preserved in yellowed formalin. Faded labels read, "Specimen hash, A17, post-test analysis." In a corner, a broken wooden desk held scattered papers and a black leather notebook. Ryan picked it up carefully, opening it. The handwriting was neat, slanted, signed H. Lowell. The first page was titled Mindvale Neural Obedience Trials, Phase 2. He skimmed, each line drying his throat. Low frequencies below 33 Hz trigger strong stimulation in the prefrontal cortex, inducing a highly receptive state. After 3 cycles, fear responses vanish, leaving only compliant behavior. In the margin, Lowell's red ink noted, particularly effective in combat-experienced soldiers. They readily recall memories and follow re-established commands. Ryan clenched the notebook, shaking his head. He flipped further, brain diagrams, EEG charts, lists of test subjects, marked A, B, C, each with a service number and death date. He stopped at A47. Cole, Ethan J., test completed. His hand shook, heart pounding. Duke came closer, nudging his leg as if to comfort. Ryan took a deep breath, set the notebook down. Among the scattered papers, he found an unsealed envelope, dusted with ash. The paper inside was yellowed, corners folded, blue ink smudged but legible. The first line, in shaky script, "Ryan, if you find this, I'm not me anymore." He sank into a chair, eyes locked on the words Ethan had written to him. The following lines were halting, choked, asterisk. They said it was trauma therapy, but I think they're erasing memories and planting something else. When they turn on the machine, I hear wind in my head, like orders. I try to resist, but my hands move on their own. I don't know if I'm human anymore. At the bottom, the writing grew frantic. If I don't come back, don't trust them. Don't come here. They want to turn us into something controlled by radio waves. Below, in trembling ink, barely readable, E.C. Ryan let the letter fall to the desk, hands gripping each other tightly. The room went silent, only the distant rain echoing through a vent. He looked up, the flashlight sweeping the room, tools, wires, metal chairs, all like a torture setup. He felt Ethan was still here, a piece of his soul trapped in these concrete walls. Duke suddenly barked, lunging toward a dark corner. Ryan swung the light. A cracked brick section, mortar crumbling, revealed another metal plate embedded in the floor. At its center, a triangle and the number 47 were chiseled. He touched it, ice cold. It could be a data vault or storage room below. A cold gust rose through a crack, carrying the old metal scent and something else, sharp, sweet, like dried blood. He stepped back, gathering the notebook and letter, tucking them into his jacket. In his mind, Ethan's photo blended with the Project Mindvale cover. One question echoed. If Ethan was here, how many others were? And what really happened when they called it treatment? Ryan scanned the room one last time, then turned the flashlight brighter, aiming at the steel plate marked 47. Every soldier's instinct told him not to open it, but something urged that the only truth left lay beneath his feet. Ryan climbed the iron staircase, each rung groaning like straining metal. As he pushed the broken panel to exit, cold air hit his face, carrying the smell of wet earth and rust. The rain had stopped, but thick fog blanketed the forest like smoke. He glanced at his watch. The luminescent hands showed just past 3 a.m. Duke bounded ahead, shaking off water, then glanced back at the dark hallway, growling softly. Ryan capped the flashlight, sweeping it one last time over the room he'd left. Everything unchanged, except the open steel door and fine dust lingering in the air. He left nothing but footprints and broken cement, yet a gut feeling told him this place was never truly abandoned. At the final step, under mud, he saw fresh boot prints, rubber-soled, military style, not his. Ryan knelt, touching the still wet grooves, gauging their direction. Someone had been here, no more than half a day ago, possibly returning after he entered. He switched off the light, standing silent for seconds, listening. No sound, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't fade. Emerging from the tunnel, dawn's light just broke over the mountain. The forest was still foggy, quiet enough to hear Duke's breathing beside him. They followed a narrow dirt path back to the pickup parked half a mile away. With each step, Ryan glanced back, sensing someone following, but saw only dense trees, branches swaying faintly in the wind. At the clearing where his truck sat, the muddy ground was churned from rain, showing other tire tracks circling through. His tires were sunk deep, one side tilted, and as he bent to check, he spotted clean slashes along the rubber sidewalls. Both rear tires were punctured with a sharp tool, the cuts precise, like a tactical knife. He gripped his backpack strap, scanning around, no engine noise, no people. Duke circled the truck, sniffing the mud, then barked softly, tail rigid. Strange boot prints led back to the main road, vanishing into thick woods. Ryan opened the door, reaching for the tire repair kit, then froze. T-Prori. On the driver's side, in wet mud, someone had written, bold and deliberate, "Leave it buried." The words stretched nearly the door's length. The mud dried to a dark brown, its sharp smell fresh. He stood still, tracing each letter as if they moved. His throat went dry. A water droplet from the roof hit buried, streaking like blood. Ryan scanned around, soldier's instincts kicking in. He checked the truck bed, finding his Glock, fully loaded. He set it to safe, tucking it into his belt. Duke circled back, standing guard at the truck's front, eyes on the forest. Nothing but birds and wind, yet Ryan knew someone had come close to the truck and knew exactly where he was. He swapped a spare tire, using a hand pump, working fast while watching his surroundings. Heart steady, breathing long and deep, like in combat. All was quiet, but the silence had weight. After nearly an hour, he finished, loaded the backpack onto the passenger seat, and started the engine. Its roar felt out of place in the forest. In the windshield, condensation reflected his face, tired, eyes sunken, clothes caked with mud and cement dust. In the rearview mirror, the dirt road to the asylum faded into fog, only dark trees faintly visible, like a fortress wall. Ryan eased the gas, the truck rolling forward, rear tires squelching heavily in the mud. He said nothing, occasionally glancing at Duke, lying by the door, ears still up. At the valley's turn, he stopped. In the rearview, a glint flickered through the woods, a round, blinking light, like a flashlight sweeping across. He blinked, looked again. It was gone. The fog swallowed everything. Ryan switched on the headlights, driving on. In his mind, the warning on the door echoed, heavy as a reverberation. Leave it buried. Someone knew what he'd found in that basement. Someone was telling him to stop, or threatening him if he didn't. As the road opened to the highway, the sun rose, casting pale gold light on the mountains. But to Ryan, that light wasn't morning's glow. It was the cold, exposing beam of the operating lamp in that lab, stripping away any chance to escape the truth. The nearest town was only 10 miles from Ryan's place, but the winding hill roads took him nearly an hour to reach it. As his truck rolled into the main street, noon sunlight glinted off faded wooden signs, casting shadows from awnings over quiet storefronts. A large clock on the church tower showed 11:30, but the street felt like it had stopped moving long ago. Ryan pulled over in front of the only open bar, its neon sign flickering faintly, Ridge Tavern. He stepped inside, Duke following, and as the door closed, all conversation in the bar stopped dead. Fewer than 10 people were inside, a few middle-aged men, a couple in the corner, all turning to stare at him. Ryan took off his cap, nodded a greeting, but no one responded. He approached the counter, voice low, black coffee, and I've got a question. The bartender, a gray-haired man, avoided his gaze, pouring the coffee without a word. Ryan sat, steam rising from the cup in the cold air. The hospital up the hill, he began, Trans-Allegheny. I heard it was under federal control? No one answered. Only the clink of a glass on the counter and a chair's creak broke the silence. A man in the corner gave a dry chuckle, voice gravelly. You a reporter, or something? Ryan shook his head. Veteran. I live nearby. Found military markings in some old files. The man took a swig of his drink, eyes bloodshot, smiling without humor. Hospital? That place was never a hospital. Just an excuse for military trucks to roll in and out. He finished speaking, only to be hushed by the bartender, Enough, Hank. But Hank waved him off, continuing, You think those screams people hear at night were patients? Nah, soldiers. They ran experiments there, Cold War days. When it all fell apart, they just changed the sign and let time cover it up. Ryan stayed silent, hearing a glass set down on the counter. Who's they? He asked. Hank glanced around, then leaned in, voice low. All I know is the guy in charge was some military doctor. Henry, something. E. Lowell, that's it. Disappeared in '74. Since then, anyone who mentions his name ends up with bad luck. He chuckled dryly, finished his drink, and staggered out the door. The bar stayed quiet. The bartender looked at Ryan, voice tense. My advice? Stop asking. Nobody here talks about that hill. Ryan nodded, left cash on the counter, and walked out. The air outside was colder than inside. He strolled down the street, eyes scanning the tin-roofed wooden houses, windows shut tight, curtains drawn, despite the midday sun. At the street's end, an old general store bore a sign, Henderson's General Store. He pushed the door open, a small bell jingling. The place smelled of flour and rotted wood. A woman at the counter, about 50 with prematurely gray hair, eyed him warily. "What do you need, sir?" Her voice soft but not friendly. "Some spare gas and dry food," Ryan replied. Then added, "You lived here long? Know anything about Trans-Allegheny Asylum?" She paused, her hand freezing mid-entry in her ledger. "Nobody calls it that anymore," she said slowly. "They call it the Hollow." "Why's that?" Ryan asked. She looked at him, her gaze probing. "Because it's empty, not just of people, but of souls. Everything that happened there should be forgotten." "You're a soldier, aren't you?" Ryan nodded. "Then you get it. Some orders you don't question." She slid his bag across the counter, voice lower. "Leave that place alone if you want to live. They're still watching. They always know who's poking around." Ryan started to ask more, but the door's bell rang. A tall man in a leather jacket and black cap entered, glancing at Ryan before heading to the back counter, without buying anything. The air in the store grew tense. Ryan nodded, thanks, grabbed his bag, and left. He didn't look back, but in the door's glass, he saw the man still standing, watching him. On the sidewalk, he noticed the street had emptied. People avoided his gaze, as if talking to him could taint them. Getting into his truck, Ryan checked the rearview mirror. A black SUV was parked 2 blocks away, headlights off, windshield reflecting the sky. He couldn't see the driver, just a vague shadow. He started the engine, driving slowly through town. The SUV began moving, keeping a steady distance. At a junction, Ryan made a sharp left. The SUV followed. He drove down a dirt road toward a field, then slammed the brakes, pulling over and cutting the engine. The SUV's engine stopped too. Ryan sat still, hand on his gun, eyes on the mirror. The SUV's door cracked open, cigarette smoke drifted out, then it closed. The vehicle didn't budge. Ryan waited a few minutes, then restarted, and turned back toward town. As he passed, the SUV stayed put, but in the mirror, its headlights flashed once, then went dark, a warning. At the final turn, he looked back. Only dust clouded the road. In his head, the drunk's voice echoed, "That place was never a hospital." Ryan left town just before sunset. The road to the highway felt abandoned, only the steady hum of his engine echoing through the forest. The sense of being watched clung to him. Each glance in the rearview mirror made him think he saw headlights flicker among the trees. At the third turn, he slowed, stopping by an old, deserted gas station. Under a rusted awning, a sign reading "Gas and Lunch" swayed in the wind. He opened his laptop, accessing West Virginia's public healthcare personnel database. A few searches brought up Helen Ward, former nurse at Trans-Allegheny Asylum until 1974, retired after an internal fire incident. Current address, Green Hollow Nursing Home, over 20 miles away. Ryan looked at Duke, saying softly, "We've got a new stop." It was fully dark when he reached Green Hollow. Tucked deep in the suburbs, it was surrounded by old oaks and a weathered wooden fence. Dim yellow light spilled from small rooms, the silence broken only by crickets in the grass. Ryan entered the main lobby, introducing himself as a relative of a former patient seeking archived records. The young nurse at the desk hesitated, then said Ward had retired years ago but lived in a staff cottage out back. Ryan thanked her and followed a stone path to a small wooden house at the garden's edge. Faint light glowed from a window, and an old radio played choppy jazz. He knocked lightly on the doorframe, voice low. "Mrs. Ward, I'm Ryan Mercer. I want to ask about Trans-Allegheny Asylum." After a long pause, the door cracked open. A woman in her 70s, with short silver hair and a frail but sharp-eyed frame, studied him. "You're not the first to find me," she said softly. "But you might be the last." She invited him in. The small room held black and white photos on the walls, some pinned with old notes, images of the hospital, long corridors, doctors in white coats. Helen poured tea, her hands trembling slightly. "You've seen combat?" she asked. Ryan nodded. "Afghanistan. I just moved near the place. And I saw something wrong." Helen gave a sad smile. "Something wrong? Nothing there was ever right, Mr. Mercer." She pulled a small wooden box from a drawer, setting it on the table. "Back then they told us it was a treatment program for traumatized soldiers. They called it memory recovery therapy." She paused, eyes distant. "But the patients never left. They arrived in military trucks, hands bound, heads covered. Once the doors closed, they weren't people anymore." Ryan stayed silent, hearing only the ticking clock. Helen opened the box, revealing a small stack of yellowed papers tied with old twine. "I kept this for 40 years, she whispered. Ryan untied it, finding charred letter fragments, blue ink smudged. The first piece bore shaky writing. "If anyone reads this, burn that place down. No one should know what they're doing here." At the bottom, E.C. Ryan's heart clenched. "Ethan Cole," he blurted. Helen nodded, one of the volunteers, a young soldier, polite, always apologizing for screaming in his sleep. "I gave him his first injection." She paused, gripping her teacup. 3 days later, they strapped him to a chair, wired electrodes to his head, said it was to stabilize brain rhythms. He never woke up. Ryan kept his voice steady. Lowell was in charge. Helen looked at him, eyes heavy with grief and fear. "Yes, Henry Lowell, a military doctor sent from the Pentagon. I thought he meant well, until I saw him order a patient's voltage increased for resisting a memorized command." Her voice dropped. "They called it Mind Veil, a behavioral control project, turning people into tools. When it was exposed, the government said Lowell died in a lab explosion. But I know he didn't." "You're sure?" Ryan asked. Helen stood walking to the window, staring into the dark garden. "Weeks after, I got an envelope. No sender. Inside was a photo of Lowell in a gray suit, with 2 men in uniforms, taken about 10 years ago. I threw it away, terrified, and moved. But I still feel them watching." She turned, eyes piercing. "You think I'm old so they'd leave me alone? No, they're still out there, Lowell's protectors. The men in black jackets you've already seen." Ryan sat still, pieces falling into place. The files, the old photo, the warning, and now a living witness. "Do you know where he is?" he asked. Helen shook her head. "No one does, but I believe he's still working somewhere in these mountains. They need isolated places, old tunnels, private power, and the asylum has it all." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "If you're smart, leave. Those who looked for Lowell before you disappeared." Ryan thanked her and stood. At the door, Helen added, voice trembling, "Mr. Mercer, you have the eyes of a survivor, but remember, the war out there is kinder than the one inside your head." She shut the door, leaving Ryan alone in the empty yard, the wind rustling a curtain. He looked at Ethan's letter fragment in his hand. The words burned that place down sharper under the dim light. Duke stood close, sniffing, ears up, beyond the gate, in the dark. A car's headlights flashed briefly and vanished. Leaving Green Hollow, it was pitch dark. The mountain road felt forsaken, Ryan's headlights cutting through thick fog. All the way back, he checked the rear view. No cars followed, but the feeling lingered. As his truck turned onto the trail to his cabin, Duke growled softly, fur bristling. Ryan killed the headlights, slowing. Among the dark trees ahead, metal glinted. He cut the engine, letting the truck coast. Closer, he saw a black van parked 50 meters from the cabin, half hidden in the forest shadow. No plates. The windshield was dusted, but the engine was warm, heat still radiating. Someone had been here, and might still be nearby. Ryan pulled the Glock from the seat pocket, signaled Duke to stay, and stepped out, moving lightly on the wet ground. The mountain wind bit his ears, carrying the fresh scent of diesel. He crouched by the van, touching the hood, still warm. The air was thick, silent, except for the wind sweeping through leaves. He looked down, spotting clear boot prints in the mud, large, military style, heading toward the cabin. He returned to the porch. The front door was ajar, though he'd locked it that morning. Inside was pitch black. He crouched low, stepping in, eyes scanning like on patrol. Windows, corners, exits, no sound, but a strange air in the house told him something had shifted. A curtain was misaligned, notebooks from his desk gone. The kitchen cabinet was open, and on the floor, wet mud showed 2 boot prints by the desk where he'd left the asylum files. All the papers he'd brought back, gone. Ryan flipped the light switch. The bulb flickered, then died. They'd cut the power. Duke growled softly, nose brushing the desk's underside. Ryan knelt, finding a sticky residue on the metal frame. He pried it off with a pocket knife, a small black device, thumb-sized, with a blinking red light, a GPS tracker. He yanked its battery, tossing it into the fireplace. It burned, smoldering out. They knew who he was, where he was. If they left the device, they wanted to track him, not kill him yet. Maybe they were waiting to see his next move. Ryan sat, breathing deep, forcing panic back. Duke sat close, eyes glinting in the firelight. Stay calm, he told himself. Battlefield or mountains, just different terrain. He grabbed his backpack, pulling out a satellite phone, camera, and external drive. The basement footage was intact. He replayed it, wires, restraint chairs, and Mindvale neural obedience trials clear under the flashlight. Lowell's notebook and Ethan's letter were photographed too. Those were all he had left, and enough to scare someone. Ryan plugged the memory card into his laptop, backing up the data. The copy progress showed 72%. He waited, eyes on the window. Outside, the wind shifted, rustling leaves. Duke lifted his head, growling softly, then dropped flat to the floor. Ryan killed all lights, leaving only the laptop's glow. When the backup finished, he opened encryption software, connecting to an old military channel. Though discharged, he still had unofficial contacts. He typed an encrypted email address, thus Kane@theledger.news, a reporter he'd worked with on a Bagram corruption case. Sarah Kane, the only one he still trusted. He typed fast. Sarah, if you get this, don't reply. Just store it and send a copy to someone you trust. This is Mindvale Project data, experiments on soldiers, conducted at Trans-Allegheny, West Virginia. If I go dark after today, publish it. He attached the videos, photos, scans, and hit send. The system showed uploading 1 of 1. Each percentage ticked like a heartbeat. When it hit 100%, he disconnected, pulled the drive, and hid it under a floorboard. Outside, a car engine hummed, fading toward the hill. Ryan shut the laptop, stood, and looked at Duke. They know we sent it, he said softly. Now it's just time. He grabbed essentials, gun, spare batteries, headlamp, and killed the lights. Before leaving, he glanced back at the cabin. Once his hope for peace after war. Now it was a temporary base, exposed. He pulled the door shut, stepping into the night. The black van was gone, leaving only wet tire tracks in the mud, leading to the highway. On the ground, something glinted, an empty bullet casing in a puddle. Ryan picked it up, checking the base, 9mm, Federal. A warning shot, left to tell him the game had begun. He pocketed it, turning to Duke. We're not coming back here. The dog gave a soft bark, following. The night wind from the valley blew back, carrying cold air and the faint smell of gasoline, traces of those who'd come and would surely return. The next morning, fog blanketed the valley like a thick sheet, heavy with the damp smell of earth. Ryan slept fitfully, half awake in the truck's seat, Glock still in hand. Duke lay curled beside him, ears twitching at the wind. As the first light filtered through the windshield, the satellite phone on the dash buzzed, showing an unknown number, military area code. Ryan stared for seconds before answering. The voice on the other end was low, firm, Ryan Mercer. You're still alive. Ryan recognized it instantly, Colonel David Crane, his old commander at Bagram. The voice, once familiar through radio static, now cut like a blade. "Colonel," Ryan replied. "Long time no hear. What's got you calling a guy discharged 3 years ago?" "Nothing, if you hadn't brought trouble on yourself." Crane paused, then said slowly, "I know you're in West Virginia, and I know you found something you shouldn't have." Ryan stayed silent, hearing faint wind static in the line. "Menvale," Crane said, voice low. "You sent data. Who's the reporter?" Ryan glanced at the forest, eyes narrowing. "You know about that? Then you know who planted a tracker on my truck." "Your people, right?" Crane sighed, the sound laced with cigarette smoke. "You don't get it, Ryan. Menvale was a defense project. It existed to protect this country. Everyone in it was a volunteer, and they knew the risks." Ryan gave a dry laugh. "Volunteers, I read the files. They were taken, drugged, strapped to chairs like animals. One of them was my friend." The line went quiet for seconds, then Crane said, "Ethan Cole." "I know." The words made Ryan grip the phone tighter. "So you know what happened to him? Were you there when they killed him?" "No one killed anyone," Crane said, voice stern. "The experiment failed. He couldn't handle the frequency." "An accident." Ryan's voice hardened. "An accident they had to hide. That scared a whole town silent? Who are you protecting, Colonel? Lowell? He's alive, isn't he?" On the other end, only slow, steady breathing. Then Crane said softly, "You don't know what you're up against, Mercer. Lowell isn't your enemy. He's part of a system. There are things bigger than me, than you, than the military you served. Mindvale didn't die, it just changed its name." Ryan leaned back in his seat, staring through the windshield. "So why'd you call me? To warn me, or to scare me into shutting up?" Crane didn't deny it. "Take my advice, Ryan. Get out of there. I'll give you a safe way out, a flight out of the country if you want. But don't send anything else. Don't mention Mindvale again. Don't force us to take the final step." Ryan gave a soft, joyless laugh. "You once taught me a soldier doesn't abandon his brothers. Now you want me to turn my back on someone who died because of your program." "Your brothers are long gone, Ryan," Crane said, voice firm. "And if you don't want to join them, forget it all. I'm serious. This isn't just about you anymore." "I've heard that before," Ryan replied slowly, eyes cold as steel. "In war, they said, for the national interest to cover up crimes. But I've seen things I can't forget, and this time, I won't stay quiet." On the other end, a faint metallic click, like a gun safety being flicked. Then Crane's voice dropped. "You're putting yourself and that reporter in danger. She doesn't understand Mindvale. It's not just a science project. It's a tool. And the people holding it won't let anyone survive who tries to expose it." Ryan looked at Duke, the dog lifting his head, eyes bright in the faint dawn light. "If you're really worried about me," Ryan said, "help me. Tell me where Lowell is." A long silence. Then Crane spoke softly, almost a sigh. "You think you're the first to look for him? They tried. A team of investigators, 2 years ago. None came back. Lowell's protected, not by us, but by people higher than the Pentagon." His voice grew graver. "Ryan, sometimes the truth doesn't save anyone. It just kills more people." The call cut off abruptly, the phone screen going dark, as if remotely disconnected. Ryan sat still, the fading static humming in his ear. Duke snorted, head turning to the window, growling softly. Beyond the forest, down the hill, an engine started and fell silent. Ryan pocketed the phone, eyes narrowing. Now he was certain, Crane wasn't just warning him, he was shielding someone, and that someone was Henry Lowell. The pieces fit. Project Mindvale, Ethan Cole, the asylum, the black van, all part of the same chessboard, and whether he liked it or not, Ryan was the only pawn still moving. The sun had just set when Ryan drove up the trail to the asylum. Dark clouds churned over the hilltop, thunder rumbling in the distance. He didn't know why he returned, only that after Crane's call, doubt had turned to cold fury. If Lowell was alive, if Mindvale never stopped, there was only one way to end it. Find undeniable proof. Duke lay in the back seat, oddly silent, as if sensing there was no turning back. The path to the hospital was nearly swallowed by nature. Moss coated the walls, vines twisting around tilted iron posts. When Ryan cut the engine, absolute silence enveloped them. He switched on his headlamp, Glock in hand, and entered through the side gate where he'd found the basement access before. The smell of mold and dust lingered, now mixed with burnt metal. Someone had been here recently. He descended to the basement, following the hallway to Ward C. The iron door he'd left ajar was now shut tight. Someone had closed it. Ryan pressed his ear to it, hearing only dripping water inside, no footsteps. He unlocked it, stepping in. Everything was nearly the same, except the filing cabinet had been moved. Someone had searched, but didn't take everything. In the corner behind the cabinet, cracked bricks revealed a metal floor. Prying it open with the crowbar, he found a hollow space, a rusted safe embedded in the concrete. Ryan knelt, touching the dial. Dust fell, revealing faint text. U.S. Army Medical Storage, 1974. He pulled out a lock-picking kit, a battlefield habit, and took nearly 5 minutes to crack it. Inside, among old documents and film canisters, was a file sealed in a military nylon bag and a black audio reel labeled in handwriting. Subject A47, Cole, Ethan J. Ryan. Lifted the reel, breath-catching. He glanced at Duke, then plugged an old mini-player into earphones. The reel's initial static hissed for seconds, then a weak, hoarse male voice spoke. Day 3. They said it'd help me sleep, but every time they turn on the machine, I'm not me anymore. A sob, then the voice rushed on. I hear them in my head, Ryan. They tell me to stand, and I do. I want to stop, but my hands don't listen. A shrill electric buzz followed, then distant screams. Ethan's voice broke. Don't let them do this to anyone else. There. The tape cut off, leaving a long, suffocating static. Ryan pulled out the earphones, frozen. Guilt and rage burned in his chest. He opened the file. The first photo was a post-mortem, Ethan on a metal table, eyes open, skin charred around his temples where electrodes had been. Next to it, a report with a familiar signature, Dr. Henry Lowell, Chief Medical Officer. The conclusion read, cause of death. Neural overload, due to high-frequency exposure. Subject terminated at 0300 hours. No mention of an accident. Every word was cold as steel. He flipped to the final pages, finding a detailed list of side effects, loss of consciousness, seizures, cardiac arrest. In the final directive column, a handwritten note in different ink, dispose of remains. Record sealed by order of D. Crane. Ryan crumpled the paper in his fist. Colonel Crane had signed the cover-up. Yesterday's call now felt like mockery. Duke snorted. Head up. Ryan followed instinctively. The flashlight wavered, hitting the wall. From the hallway's far end, another light reflected, a handheld beam. He instantly killed his light, pulling Duke behind the cabinet, crouching low. Footsteps echoed, slow, steady. One person, heavy boots, rubber soles, heading straight for the room. Ryan drew his gun, holding his breath. The figure stopped at the door, a light sweeping through the gap. A radio crackled. Basement clear. No signs of entry. Checking Ward C. Another voice replied. Fainter. Copy. The shadow turned, footsteps fading. Ryan waited 10 seconds. Then flicked his light back on, stuffing the file and reel into a waterproof bag. He knew he had minutes before they returned. Turning, his light caught something else in the corner. A rusted dog tag under the table's leg. He picked it up, reading the engraving. Cole, Ethan J., USMC, blood type O+. His hand shook. The tag was ice cold. Outside, the radio crackled again. Ward C. Report. Anything? The earlier voice replied, old traces, but someone might have been here. Cabinet's been opened. Ryan cursed under his breath, pulling Duke along the wall, heading for the hallway opposite the light. The smell of damp concrete mixed with diesel and dust. He heard a metal lock click behind him. They were coming back. With every instinct left, Ryan ran, his feet recalling combat steps. Silent, fast, no hesitation. At the hallway's end, faint natural light spilled through a crack in an old hatch. the technical stairwell exit. Duke surged ahead. Ryan followed, heart pounding. Only one thought: Ethan died here, and his killers were still alive. The iron door behind burst open like a gunshot. Ryan barely pulled Duke up the stairs as a blinding white light swept the hallway. "Someone's here," a low, harsh male voice shouted. Then came the thud of boots on concrete, the clink of a gun against a belt. Ryan sprinted up the final steps, his flashlight clanging against the wall, then dying. Darkness swallowed them. He pressed against the wall, holding his breath, as the radio grew closer. "He's got a dog. Shoot if needed." A beam hit the stairs. Ryan fired a single shot to block the path. The bullet's echo roared through the basement. Duke barked loudly, then lunged forward. They raced through a flooded hallway, each step splashing white foam. Red laser dots trailed behind, weaving through the water like glowing snakes. "Block the north exit," a voice shouted. A muffled shot rang out, a bullet embedding in the wall near Ryan's head, spraying cement dust. He dodged, feeling a burning sting rip through his left shoulder. The bullet grazed, leaving hot blood. Ryan gritted his teeth, not stopping. A half-second's delay would trap them. Duke spun, snarling, and clamped onto the leg of a figure emerging from a side path. A pained yell echoed, followed by a wild shot. Ryan fired twice, the muzzle flash, revealing a masked face, cold, emotionless. The figure collapsed, gun splashing into the water. The hallway reeked of gunpowder and mold. Ryan pulled Duke, following a service duct he'd seen on his first visit. They crawled in, the narrow, slick pipe dripping steadily. Behind, boots echoed closer. A smoke grenade rolled into the duct, popping with white fumes that stung Ryan's eyes. He coughed, wrapping his jacket around his mouth, crawling faster. Duke led, claws slipping on metal. A faint light appeared ahead, the duct's exit. Ryan elbowed the metal cover, which clattered to the ground with a loud echo. Cold night air hit his face, smelling of earth and moss. He rolled out, collapsing onto wet grass. Duke right behind. He scrambled up, shoulder throbbing, blood soaking his sleeve. Headlights flashed behind. They'd caught up. He fired 3 shots, then sprinted for the dense forest behind the asylum. Branches whipped his face, mud sucked at his ankles, but he ran. Gunshots followed, a bullet splintering a tree by his head. Duke ran parallel, growling, breathing hard. Ryan veered through a shallow creek bed, sliding down a slope. Rainwater rushed from above, slick with mud. Another bullet grazed his shoulder, making him stumble. He rolled down the incline, hitting a rock, pain shooting through his left arm. But looking up, the headlights had dimmed behind. They'd lost him, for now. Ryan lay still for seconds, catching his breath. Duke licked the blood on his shoulder, eyes worried. Ryan patted the dog's head, forcing himself up, pulling the waterproof drive from his pocket. It held everything. Mindvale data, Ethan's autopsy photos, the files. If it fell into their hands, it would all vanish again. Engines rumbled in the distance. They were fanning out to surround the forest. Ryan pulled up his hood, moving against the creek's flow, eastward. Every few dozen meters, he crouched, listening. At every rustle of leaves, he and Duke froze, blending into the dark. Clouds hid the moon, his flashlight's beam catching only his blood-wet hand. After nearly half an hour, Ryan reached an old road to the highway, a crumbling wooden bridge he'd crossed before. Beyond was an open field, clear for a satellite signal. He checked his shoulder. The bullet had grazed, but blood still oozed. No time. He unstrapped his pack, wrapping gauze around the wound, then checked the drive. Its light blinked green, still working. He exhaled, voice hoarse. "Good, we're still alive." Duke barked softly, ears up. Ryan looked up, headlights swept the distant forest. They were still hunting. He gripped Duke's collar, whispering, "Let's go, buddy, no stopping now." They veered off the main path, melting into the night. Behind, the pursuers' radios crackled through the wind, lost GPS signal. He might be heading east. Call Group 2 to block the highway. Ryan's lips tightened, pushing forward faster. Pain burned his shoulder like fire, but he didn't slow. The creek's water reflected his faint flashlight, guiding them deeper into the forest. As the engines faded, only his heavy breathing and pounding heart remained. Ryan stopped, looking up at the gray sky through the trees. A thought struck: they'd cut the GPS, meaning they couldn't track him, for now. He clutched the drive, knowing it was his lifeline. The night wind blew hard, carrying the valley's chill. Ryan sat on a rock, leaning against a tree, closing his eyes. Duke lay close, breathing steady. In the distance, lightning lit the asylum's ruined dome, still faintly smoking. Tonight's chase was just the start. Ryan knew, come dawn, the men in black jackets would return. More of them, better organized, until he or the truth was buried for good. Morgantown greeted Ryan with air thick with exhaust and the damp of recent rain. He'd driven all night through winding mountain roads, hands shaking as blood seeped through his shoulder's bandage. The small city was awake, but its lights felt no safer than the forest. He parked behind an old cafe by the Monongahela River, killed the engine, and sat until a train's whistle echoed in the distance. The cafe door opened, and a woman stepped out, dark hair tied high, gray raincoat. Sarah Kane, investigative reporter for the Ledger, who'd dared write about buried government programs. He'd sent her the data 2 days ago, unsure she'd respond, but she was here, on time. "You look worse than your military ID photo," she said, voice calm, but eyes scanning the lot, wary as someone who'd been tailed before. Ryan nodded, keeping his voice low. "I'm not here for pleasantries, I need confirmation. Minevale's real, isn't it?" Sarah pulled her hood down, glanced around, and motioned inside. They took a corner table by a fogged window. The cafe had a few patrons, mostly students, none paying attention. She opened her laptop, typed commands, and pulled up Ryan's data, basement videos. Lowell's notebook scans, Ethan Cole's autopsy photos. Minevale was funded secretly by the Department of Defense in 1960, she said, finger-tapping a document line. Approved by Undersecretary Harold D. Crane, Colonel David Crane's father. Ryan looked up, eyes narrowing. She continued. After a 1975 scandal, it was declared canceled, but really it moved to a private contractor. Blackridge Labs, a defense firm specializing in neural tech. Since then, they've run dozens of similar projects. Minevale was just phase 1. She tilted the screen, showing a recent photo. This is Henry Lowell. Not dead, as they claimed. 2 years ago, he surfaced at a biotech conference in Richmond, under the alias Dr. Harold Lynn. I traced his bank account, direct payments from Blackridge. Sarah looked up, voice low. If you're right, and that drive's data is real, Minevale never ended. It's been upgraded into something bigger. A national-scale neural control system. Ryan leaned back, his shoulder wound throbbing. "And Crane told me to shut up for national security," he said slowly. "What nation needs to hide killing its own soldiers?" Sarah studied him, then said softly. "Know why they're scared of you? You've got human proof. They can call documents fake, but Ethan Cole, if you prove he was killed in their tests, their whole system collapses." Ryan stayed silent. She lit a cigarette, taking a long drag. "I'll send a copy of this data to my lawyer in D.C., she said. "If I disappear, it'll hit every major outlet." He looked through the glass. Light rain fell. Across the street, a black SUV parked, engine running, headlights on. Unease crept up his spine. "Sarah," Ryan said quietly, "we need to go." She frowned, following his gaze. "You sure?" He nodded. They stood almost in unison, Ryan pushing the door, Duke leaping from the truck bed. He moved to the cafe's side, but an engine roared behind. The SUV's headlights blazed, lighting the street white. "Run!" Ryan yelled. Glass shattered as the first bullets tore through the cafe door. Sarah fell on the steps, clutching her stomach, blood seeping through her gray coat. Ryan dragged her behind a concrete pillar, firing back. Duke barked, charging the vehicle. Bullets sparked off the wall. One hit Ryan's left shoulder, same spot, pain blinding. He fired twice, one bullet hitting the SUV's front tire, another shattering its side mirror. The SUV reversed fast, vanishing into the rain, leaving gunpowder and burnt rubber. Sarah gasped, blood bright on her hands. "Go," she rasped. "Don't let them catch you. The data, get it to Washington." Ryan gripped her hand, scanning for an ambulance, but the street was empty. Cafe patrons had fled. No one dared appear. He pulled the drive from his pocket, tucking it into his inner jacket. "I'll come back for you," he said firmly. Sarah nodded faintly, lips trembling. "Don't come back, just get the truth out." Duke barked urgently. Ryan carried Sarah inside, laying her behind the counter, binding her wound with a towel. She grabbed his hand, eyes wet but fierce. "Mind veil doesn't just kill, Ryan. It's being used. Listen, it's active." Her words faded into weak breaths. Police sirens wailed faintly, fading in the rain. Ryan stood, pulling his jacket over the drive, signaling Duke. They slipped out the back door, running down a dark alley. In a parked car's side mirror, he saw the SUV's lights return, sweeping the building. Everything was closing in, and now, his only choice was to keep the truth alive longer than himself. Ryan drove through the night, wind slicing through the window like a knife. The bandage on his shoulder was soaked red, but he didn't stop. Every road led back to the hill where Trans-Allegheny Asylum lurked in shadow. He'd lost too much brother's trust. And now Sarah, the last person who stood with him. Since leaving Morgantown, one thought consumed him. If he didn't end this, no one would. At the forest turn, the clock read 2:17 a.m. Thick fog cloaked the road, headlights piercing only a few meters ahead. Duke sat beside, ears up, eyes fixed on the window. The dog seemed to sense their destination. An old hell reopening its gates. The pickup stopped at the hill's base, half a mile from the asylum. Ryan opened the tailgate, checking gear, a fully loaded Glock, a headlamp, 2 smoke grenades, and a small pack of explosives from his military days. His last resort. He stuffed them into his pack, zipped his jacket, and tightened the straps. "No way back, Duke," he said softly. The dog gave a low bark, as if in reply. They crossed the forest, dry branches snapping underfoot, light rain mixed with fog, clinging to skin like cold sweat. The asylum loomed through the trees, a crumbling concrete husk, its windows like empty eye sockets staring down the valley. The headlamp's weak beams swept the ruined walls, casting shadows of 2 intruders like lost souls. Ryan paused at the steps, eyeing a broken sign, State Psychiatric Facility, closed, since 1975. The rusted letters gleamed like dried blood. He took a deep breath, gripping the gun. "Let's go." Inside, the air reeked of rot and burnt smoke, traces of last week's gunfight. The hallway was silent, save for dripping from a broken pipe. Duke led, moving low, steps sure. They followed the old path to the basement. The staircase was partly collapsed, but Ryan knew the way. Each step echoed like a death knell. At the main hallway he stopped, switching on a handheld camera. Its lens trembled with his heavy breathing. Ryan opened the iron door at the hallway's end, where he'd seen the restraint chairs and control panels. The old lab was still there, but now fresh muddy footprints marked the table. Someone had been here before him. He swept the light around dusty machines, dangling wires, but in the far corner, a metal cabinet stood, still locked. Etched on its surface, property of Blackridge Labs. He guessed it held data drives, the final proof Lowell and Crane wanted buried. He attached a small explosive to the lock, stepped back, and triggered it. A soft blast, and the lock popped open. Inside, a large hard drive labeled Project Manvale, Neural Response Data, Phase 2. He carefully tucked it into a waterproof bag, then turned on the camera, voice hoarse. October 14th. This is Manvale's original data. They tested on people. They called it treatment, but it was murder. Ethan Cole didn't kill himself. They killed him here. Wind howled through the hallway, making the flashlight flicker. Duke growled softly. Ryan looked up at the room's far end. A faint light glinted, like a reflection off glass. A shadow flickered, then vanished. He aimed his gun, stepping slowly. No response. Just the lingering smell of old gunpowder, maybe imagination, or maybe someone was waiting. Either way, he couldn't stop. Ryan placed 2 more explosive charges in the room's corners, wiring a timer. "We're burning this place down," he said softly, like a vow. 10 minutes, enough to get out. He knelt, patting Duke's head, hand sticky with dust and blood. "If I don't make it, you run. Got it?" The dog just stared, eyes reflecting the light like twin flames. As he turned, light flared from the top of the stairs. Someone flicked on an industrial lamp. A low voice echoed through the hallway. "Ryan Mercer, you shouldn't have come back." Metal clanged, then silence. Ryan stood in the room, heart pounding, Glock raised to chest level. "I came to finish this," he said. Voice, steady as steel. In the darkness above, Duke growled. The hallway trembled faintly, wind swirling through with the scent of ozone and electricity. Ryan tightened his grip on the trigger, eyes locked on the stairs, where a figure emerged, light glinting off a badge on their jacket. Crane. Ryan froze in the hallway's dim glow, Glock still raised. But the figure stepping from the stairs wasn't Crane. A long coat moved slowly, a gaunt frame, silver hair falling over the forehead. When the face caught the flashlight's beam, Ryan nearly stopped breathing. Dr. Henry Lowell, older than in the photos, but eyes sharp as knives. He paused at the threshold, holding a metal cane, voice hoarse yet steady. "I knew you'd come back, Mercer. Those who survived the experiments can never stay away too long." Ryan stepped back, gun still aimed. "You're alive. They said you died in the '74 explosion." Lowell's lips curled into a half smile. "I died to the government, not to science. You think this country would let a mind like mine vanish?" He stepped closer, each tap of his cane steady on the floor. "I served this nation, Ryan. I turned human fear into a tool. From Minevale, we learned to control violence, to control war." Ryan tightened his grip, voice rough. "By killing the innocent, by burning them in electric chairs." Lowell stopped, his gaze icy. "Not innocent. They were soldiers, made to obey. I just perfected their purpose." He tilted his head, studying Ryan like a specimen under a microscope. "You were part of the program too. Don't you remember? The reflex tests, recurring dreams, sounds only you could hear, all echoes of Minevale." A chill ran down Ryan's spine. "You're lying," he growled. "I was never in any program." Lowell chuckled softly, then turned, pointing deeper into the basement. "Want the truth? Follow me." Ryan kept his gun raised, but his feet moved forward, Duke close by, growling low. They turned down a narrow, sloping hallway until the air grew dry, the ozone smell overpowering the mold. The room at the end opened up, low-ceilinged, steel walls lined with dozens of cables and old, still glowing monitors. The hum of electric fans thrummed like a giant heartbeat. Lowell stood in the center, back turned. "This is Minevale's heart," he said, hand resting on a dusty control panel. "All the data, thousands of trials, brainwaves, responses, voices, stored here. No matter who ordered it destroyed, I kept a copy. Because scientific truth can't be burned." He flipped a switch, fluorescent lights flickering on, illuminating rows of servers stretching to the ceiling. The central monitor displayed scrolling code, a small line in the corner, neural integration active. Ryan stared, heart racing. "You're still running it?" Lowell turned, eyes gleaming with smug pride. "I never stopped. The government just renamed the project. Now it's NIP, Neural Integration Program. Blackridge runs it, but the idea's mine. Minevale never ended. It evolved." He stepped closer, each word deliberate. "You think you're free, Mercer? No. You're living in the aftermath of what I created. You, and hundreds like you, are versions of Minevale. Your fear, your anger, your survival instincts, all programmed." "Exactly," Ryan growled, pulling hard. Lights flickered out, monitors glitching, a high-pitched whine piercing the air. Lowell lunged, punching Ryan's wounded shoulder, forcing him back against a metal pillar. They grappled, crashing into the panel. Duke barked, biting Lowell's arm. He yelled in pain, shoving the dog off, then stumbled, head hitting the table's edge. Ryan seized the chance, yanking the main breaker. The room shook violently, monitors blinking off and on, red lights flashing rapidly. Lowell crawled forward, eyes wild. "You don't get it. This isn't just here. Every server in this country is linked. Cutting it here only triggers the backup chain. It'll send copies to Blackridge's system." Ryan looked up, seeing code on the screens. "Data backup initiated." He stepped to the panel, pulling a smoke grenade from his belt, popping the pin, and jamming it into the wiring. "Then I'll cut the source." Lowell lunged, too late. The grenade burst, thick smoke flooding the room, mixing with green electric arcs like mini lightning. The system roared, servers screeching, then choking. Ryan coughed, pulling Duke toward the door, shouting over the din. "It's over, Lowell." Behind, Lowell's voice echoed through smoke and sparking. "No, Mercer, you broke one piece. Thousands of Minvales are waiting to wake." Ryan glanced back. Through the haze, Lowell stood amid flickering servers, red light, glinting off blood and dust. He looked up, smiling, whispering as if to himself, "We're all its products." Then the system shut down, plunging the room into thick darkness. Only the wind howling through vents, like Minvale's soul gasping its last. Smoke filled the room, red warning lights, slashing like blades. Ryan coughed, pulling Duke back, but through the haze, Lowell stood, frenzied, bloodied hands clawing the panel. "You can't stop it, Mercer," he screamed, voice echoing from a void. "I've uploaded the data to the satellite. Minvale lives in everyone." Ryan choked, eyes burning but pressed forward. "No, it dies with you." He charged, shoving hard. They crashed to the floor. Cables snapping. Electricity sparked, green flashes around them, the stench of burning skin. Lowell hissed, hands clawing Ryan's throat. "You think you're different? You're the perfect test subject." Ryan threw an elbow into Lowell's face, rolling aside, gasping. Duke lunged, biting Lowell's coat sleeve, yanking hard. A crack sounded, cables tore free, sparks flying. Lowell fell against the servers, back pressed to the sparking panel, smoke rising thickly. Ryan struggled up, but Lowell clung on. "You don't get it, Mercer," he roared. "Fear is the plague. I found the cure. Without me, humans will slaughter each other over fear." Ryan raised the Glock, trembling, blood soaking his sleeve. "It's not fear that killed them," he rasped, "but men who think they can erase it." Lowell's dry laugh turned to hacking coughs. "You're no different from me. I just went further." He lunged for the gun, but Duke barked, biting his wrist. Lowell screamed, dropping it. Ryan kicked hard, sending him into the panel. Electricity roared, sparks shooting along the wall like underground thunder. Lowell's body jerked, eyes wide, mouth open but silent. Seconds later, the stench of burning filled the air, a blinding flash, fading to darkness. He collapsed, smoke rising from his scorched blouse. Ryan stepped back, panting, gun still in hand. "It's over," he whispered, but the floor trembled. Servers exploded in bursts, metal groaning. A gas pipe in the ceiling burst, spraying sparks. The asylum shuddered like a dying beast. Ryan pulled Duke, shouting over the roar, "Let's go." They ran through the hallway, smoke and heat engulfing them. Each step felt like treading on shaking ground. Behind, the lab exploded, a white flash blasting the steel door. The force threw Ryan to the floor, dust and glass flying. His ears rang, then Duke's sharp bark cut through. He crawled up, looking back. Flames consumed the basement, dangling wires glowing red. The walls cracked, concrete falling. Ryan yanked Duke toward the stairs, heat searing his back like a blade. "Faster, buddy," he yelled, voice raw. As they hit the third step, the ceiling behind collapsed, dust choking the air. A metal beam struck Ryan's leg, dropping him to his knees. Duke bit his sleeve, pulling. Ryan gritted his teeth, freeing the beam, and limped on. The metal door to the main hallway was warped. He shoved with all his strength. It burst open, night air rushing in with rain and cold. Ryan and Duke stumbled out as a second explosion roared. flames shooting through cracks like a dragon's breath. The building shook, the dome cracking, walls crumbling with a valley-shaking roar. Ryan turned, seeing the lab where Lowell fell, swallowed in fire. "This is where it ends," he said softly. Duke barked long, the sound blending with the booming flames rising from the asylum's heart. The fire devoured the basement, spreading to the hallways, burning Mindvale's legacy. As the main roof collapsed, Ryan knew it wasn't just a building falling, but an era's secrets crumbling with it. The fire spread faster than Ryan expected. Night wind whipped through broken windows, fueling bursts of flame, casting red light down the halls. Thick smoke carried the acrid stench of burning plastic and metal. Ryan crouched low, pulling Duke through waves of heat. Small explosions echoed, gas pipes in the walls sparking blue, screaming like burning souls. He knew they had minutes before the basement collapsed. The metal floor vibrated underfoot. Each step, the heat grew. Ryan zipped his pack, ensuring the Mindvale drive was safe in its waterproof bag. It was the one thing he couldn't lose, the final proof of the crimes. He breathed hard, smoke and dust burning his lungs. Duke growled softly, ears down, running while glancing back at the flames, swallowing the old path. "Keep going, buddy, we're almost out," Ryan rasped. He checked doors along the hallway. Empty, only shadows and ruin. In the administrative wing, the ceiling split, concrete raining down. A chunk hit his shoulder, knocking him down, blood mixing with dust. He struggled up, steadying Duke as the dog slipped on wet floors. A loud blast came from the east, where old medical gas tanks stood. A white flame shot through the ceiling, shaking the building. The blast shattered windows, throwing Ryan and Duke against a wall, ears ringing. As the smoke cleared, he staggered forward. The main exit wasn't far, but the hallway was a fiery maze. His headlamp was dead, only the flames' glow guiding them. He tied a wet cloth over his mouth, eyes streaming. "Go, Duke!" he barked. The dog leaped over debris, leading to the exit. Each step left bloody prints in the hot ash. Ahead, the final iron door, rear courtyard exit, was blocked by a fallen beam. Ryan pushed with all his strength, metal screeching. He yelled, straining, and the beam shifted. A crack sounded as the hinges gave. The door flew open, cold air flooding in like salvation. Duke bolted out, then turned, barking loudly. Ryan clutched his pack, stepping through as a final explosion roared from the basement's depths. The force threw him to the ground, rolling down steps, dust and flames rising like a storm. He shielded Duke, glass shards flying around. Looking up, the night sky blazed. The asylum was a sea of fire, a massive blaze roaring red like a monster's heart. Windows burst, the dome collapsed, walls fell with a thunderous roar shaking the valley. Ryan lay there, gasping, shoulder throbbing, eyes fixed on the black smoke curling into the clouds. Duke panted beside him, fur singed. Ryan placed a hand on the dog's head, whispering, "We did it." In the fire's glow, his face was caked with ash, but his eyes burned with pain, exhaustion, and resolve. Distant fire truck sirens wailed, but he didn't look back. Ryan stood, watching the building crumble into rubble. The memories, screams, trapped souls, all burned away. He touched his chest, where the drive warmed inside his jacket, and whispered, "Ethan, you're free now." Night wind carried ash and the stench of burning. Ryan and Duke backed down the dirt path, leaving the blazing hill behind, where a dark chapter of history burned, but the truth lived on in the hands of the last man to walk out of hell. The night forest was silent, save for wind hissing through charred trees and thick smoke from the distant hill. Ryan and Duke had gone nearly a mile since the asylum's collapse. He stopped at a clearing, collapsing against a fallen oak. His breathing was labored, left shoulder screaming, the wound torn wider as he tried rebandaging it with singed cloth. Each inhale stabbed his chest like a knife. Duke lay close, head up, listening to every sound. Far off, fire truck lights flashed red, reflecting on clouds. "We're not done yet, buddy," Ryan whispered, voice raw. "Not until the truth is seen, they still win." He opened his pack, pulling out the singed satellite laptop. The Mindvale drive was safe, its metal case hot but intact. Ryan plugged in the cable, the screen flickering on slowly, signal light blinking faintly, battery at 12%. Time was short. He opened the folder, scrolling through files, lab videos, autopsy records, Ethan's audio, Lowell's photos, all packed into under 2 gigabytes, but enough explosive evidence to topple a government. He activated satellite transmission, entering encrypted addresses: Reuters, The Ledger, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, The Guardian. Each name appeared on the screen like a door to justice. Hands trembling from blood loss, Ryan typed a brief note: Mindvale Project. Classified evidence of neural control experiments by the Department of Defense and Blackridge Labs. Publish upon receipt. He hit transmit. The signal began, progress bar showing. Uploading 3%. The wind blew harder, carrying a chill. Ryan shivered, not just from the wound, but from losing blood too fast. He pressed the cloth tighter, sweat and blood running down his neck. Duke lay close, eyes fixed on him. "It's okay," Ryan said softly, his shaking hand patting the dog's head. "Just a little longer. 10%, 22%, 47%. The numbers ticked up slowly. In the distance, a helicopter's hum grew closer, maybe a search team, maybe Blackridge's remnants. "If they come," he said quietly, "we finish first." The wind howled, shaking the screen, the satellite signal weakening. He hunched over, shielding the laptop with his body. Each stab of pain felt like a knife, but he didn't stop. The 68%, 81%, 93%. His vision blurred, breathing ragged. Ethan's face flashed in his mind. The smile back at base, then the charred face on the lab table. He clenched his fist. "Rest easy, I promised." The modem's light blinked rapidly, a beep sounding. The screen flashed. "Upload complete. 100% successful." Ryan looked up, eyes bloodshot, a faint smile breaking through. "It's done," he said, voice barely a whisper. "They can't hide it anymore." He shut the laptop, pulled the drive, and hid it under wet tree roots. Duke barked softly, nudging his shoulder. Ryan leaned against the tree, looking at the sky. The dark clouds had parted, revealing a faint moon through the smoke. "Free now," he said quietly. "For all those they called test subjects." His breath slowed, eyelids heavy. Duke lay beside him, head on his leg, eyes watching the slope where the helicopter's lights flashed closer. Before slipping into exhausted sleep, Ryan heard distant radio chatter, frantic voices, camera flashes, and news breaking through the wind. Blackridge Labs accused of involvement in Mindvale neural experiments. He smiled one last time, hand resting on Duke's head. "We did it, buddy." As the satellite screen went dark, the only light left was the moon reflecting in the loyal eyes of his dog, the truth's final sentinel. A week after the Trans-Allegheny fire, America erupted in an unprecedented information earthquake. From Washington to Los Angeles, breaking news flooded every channel. Classified Mindvale files leaked. Government probes human behavior control experiments. International outlets echoed it, calling it the biggest disclosure since Watergate. Images of Blackridge Labs' sealed buildings and FBI vans at their gates dominated media. The Department of Defense issued a statement suspending all applied neural project contracts, but observers knew it was a euphemism for cutting ties. At the Pentagon, senior generals were urgently summoned. Reports named 3, including Colonel David Crane, former Mindvale overseer, under investigation for human rights violations and falsified death records. An anonymous Justice Department source revealed the files were sent via encrypted military channels. Only an insider could access them. The public immediately questioned who sent them. Meanwhile, at Morgantown Hospital, Sarah Kane awoke after a week in a coma. The bullet through her side hadn't taken her life, and on her third day conscious, she made her first statement. Under bright press lights, she spoke slowly but clearly. Mindvale isn't just a crime of a few. It's proof fear can be weaponized. A soldier risked his life to end it. His story won't be buried. Her special report, published in the Ledger 3 days later, titled The War Within, detailed her data collection, Lowell's confession, and the final night's fire as a symbol of a dark era's collapse. The report spread like wildfire. International human rights groups condemned it. The UN launched an emergency hearing on inhumane neural experiments. University students protested with signs reading, "We are not experiments." Blackridge became a cursed name, its stock plummeting, its Arlington headquarters besieged for days. Scientists tied to the project were detained for questioning. Amid the chaos, Ryan Mercer's name was never mentioned. The government, per Justice Department orders, granted federal witness protection to an anonymous source, identified as the Mindvale leak's origin, codenamed Echo 17. No one knew his whereabouts, only a curt evening news note. The whistleblower is under safe protection. But to Sarah and those who read her report, they knew who he was, the veteran with eyes that stared into the dark. At the end of The War Within, Sarah wrote, "There are wars not fought on battlefields, but in human minds." Ryan Mercer carried the fire of truth from hell so we could see what they hid. He didn't need titles or praise, he just needed the world to know fear can't be programmed. The piece closed with the only photo left of him, a blurry military file shot, a man in mountain fog, beside a German shepherd with eyes guarding something sacred. Beneath a small caption, he burned the darkness. Spring returned to the Trans-Allegheny Mountains, bringing damp earth and the trickle of valley streams. From a forest trail, a small wooden cabin stood under pine shadows, blue smoke curling from its chimney, blending with morning mist like peaceful breath. Ryan Mercer lived there with Duke. The shoulder wound had healed, but deeper scars in memory remained etched. He rose early each day, brewed coffee, and opened the door to the east, where dawn light hit green hills. Duke often lay by the steps, head on his master's feet, ears pricked to the wind. That life was simple, no gunfire, no sirens, just forest, rain, and silence. One late April afternoon, Ryan carried a shovel and a small stone marker to a clearing near the forest's edge, where he'd buried Ethan Cole's old dog tag. The marker bore a simple inscription, "Ethan Cole, and those forgotten." Below he carved a smaller line, "They were not experiments." When done, Ryan sat by the marker, hand on the earth. "You've been heard, Ethan," he said softly. "The world knows Mindvale's name, and they can't erase it." Duke sat beside, head low, as if guarding the sleep of the lost. From there, looking north, the ruins of Trans-Allegheny Asylum were visible, blackened iron frames, overgrown with moss and weeds. When wind blew, metal scraped like echoes of the past. Locals said on clear nights, faint lights flickered from the rubble, as if the fire never fully died. Ryan knew it wasn't fire, but memory, unburnable. Evenings, he sat at a wooden table, writing the full story. The first page began simply, "My name is Ryan Mercer. This is the truth about Mindvale." His hand trembled, but the words were steady. He recounted everything, from the moment Duke led him to the hospital gate, to the night the asylum fell. Not just to preserve, but to remind himself the truth was freed by the blood of many. Each page dried by the fireplace, wind through the window, like the breath of souls once trapped there. When the manuscript was done, Ryan sealed it in an envelope with red wax, writing, "To Sarah Kane. Publish, upon my death." He trusted she'd understand. Sarah was now a leading voice against inhumane experiments, her war within read worldwide as a warning. Ryan needed no more fame. He just wanted, if they tried to forget again, someone to open this envelope and remind the world the fire of truth once burned in the darkest night. That night, Ryan sat on the porch, watching the moon hang over the forest. Duke lay close, breathing steady. He said softly, "Everything gets buried, but not the truth. Once lit, it finds its way." The wind carried pine scent, light and clear, like an answer. Far off, where the asylum once stood, a small light flickered in the dark, not a destroying flame, but dawn approaching. Ryan smiled, closing his eyes. Duke lay still, eyes on the hill, guarding as always. As morning wind stirred, rustling pine needles, it felt like familiar voices whispered in the breeze. We weren't mad, we just wanted to be heard. Ryan Mercer and Mindvale's story isn't just about conspiracy and scientific crime, but a mirror reflecting modern America's obsession, where the line between national security and human rights grows thin. In today's context, as AI, biometric data, and digital surveillance surge, the question the story poses, how far is too far in the name of safety, is urgent. Mindvale's aim to erase fear to create perfect warriors echoes real debates about governments and tech giants exploiting human data to control behavior. Ryan's act, risking his life to expose the truth, embodies the whistleblower spirit. America reveres yet struggles with. He didn't fight for fame or revenge, he fought believing truth, once ignited, can't be buried. In a world of fake news, propaganda, and sophisticated manipulation, Ryan's courage to face truth is a profound lesson. Silence can be complicity. The story also reminds us that loyalty to country doesn't mean blind obedience. Like Ryan, every citizen has a duty to question, to defend ethics and human dignity against what's called the greater good. In today's America, where freedom is core, courage to speak truth remains the flame to preserve, for only then does democracy truly matter. Thank you for joining Ryan and Duke's journey, where the fire of truth illuminated long-hidden shadows. Subscribe to the channel to explore more true stories where courage and faith still have the power to change the world.